Hello, everyone. I'm really pleased and happy to welcome with me Jeff Richard, the person who is creative director of Chaosium, leader author of the Guide of Glorantha, HeroQuest Glorantha, RuneQuest role-playing game, and many supplements and articles all around. And I believe that, for me, one of the most important things, either great dungeon master. So welcome, Jeff, really.
Great, it's great to be here. Fantastic.
I'm really glad that you are with us, and I think that most of the people here in Poland, when they think about Chaosium now, they think about Call of Cthulhu. Being honest, Call of Cthulhu had great impact in Polish role-playing games. Mm-hmm. 2 years ago, it's 2 years or 1 year?
It's 2 years.
It's 2 years when we launched the Kickstarter here in Poland for a new edition of Call of Cthulhu, and it was
a fantastic. I mean, man, It is one of the best editions in any language. It's fantastic.
Yes, and the results were amazing. Over 1 million of Polish zloty raised, and all in all, we have now new edition of Call of Cthulhu. Here in Poland, almost everyone is playing Call of Cthulhu. When you ask someone who plays role-playing games, I cannot imagine if that person wouldn't know what is Call of Cthulhu. So that's really amazing. And of course, the game is great. The edition here in Poland, we are really happy about it. And there is one thing that I would like to tell you and start this conversation with you. As we have Call of Cthulhu, there are either different role-playing games here in Poland. And I want to concentrate about the fantasy games that we have here. I believe that most of the Polish role-playing games fans, they are playing Dungeons & Dragons and Warhammer. However, I believe that there is on the market really old system, really good system, one of the best one, question mark, but amazing. And I'm talking about the RuneQuest. The RuneQuest is, I believe that for many Polish fans, they are not much familiar with it. And I'm hoping that they will, after our conversation, that they will go and take this beautiful, really beautiful rulebook.
God, it's beautiful, didn't it? That's the newest edition. It came out absolutely magnificent.
Yeah, it's really beautiful, and illustration, everything in it looks great. But I think that I would like to talk with you and ask you, because as I mentioned, a lot of Polish players probably don't know how much about the RuneQuest. So what is it, and how would you present it to them?
I mean, if you're familiar with Call of Cthulhu, you're actually familiar with RuneQuest, because Call of Cthulhu came out of RuneQuest. Chaosium, a little bit of ancient history. Chaosium was founded by Greg Stafford to make a... Greg wanted to play around with different ways of presenting fantasy literature. And he started with this board game called White Bear and Red Moon. This is about 1975, 1976. And initially he had one friend who tried to take the setting of White Bear, Red Moon and adapt it to a variant of D&D at the time called the Arduin Grimoire. And again, this is 75, 76. This is the very, very first years of fantasy role playing. And they played around with it. Greg wasn't very impressed with the system. He didn't like how the game oriented you purely around going around, killing things, taking their stuff, getting better at killing things, taking their stuff, rinse, rewash. And a year later, Greg was at a party for science fiction writers out in the Berkeley area. and a young Steve Perrin said, "Hey, I've got this idea that we can completely redo the way we present a role-playing game. What it's going to be is it's going to be your chance of doing any sort of skill that your character can do. We will get rid of levels, we will get rid of classes, we will get rid of all of that, and we'll create a combat system that is fast, fun, exciting, and dangerous." Now, if you're familiar with Call of Cthulhu, you're familiar with that combat system when it's applied to guns, right?
Yep.
What happens when you get in a gunfight in Cthulhu?
You can die immediately, almost.
So RuneQuest, though, was the fantasy origins of all of this, and it was set in Greg Stafford's fictional world of Glorantha, which is up there with Middle Earth and Tecumseh, is basically the three really original creations in fantasy literature. So if you think about Middle Earth is an attempt to retell the great English language epic from a philologist, right? That Tolkien was fascinated by language and whatnot. And what you get is basically this great English, dare we say even Anglo-Saxon epic built around his love of language. There was another setting called Tecumseh, which was by a professor of South Asian languages, M.A. Barker, which again was a language created game. And then there's Glorantha, which is the setting for RuneQuest. And that is pretty much the only RPG setting that was ever based around let's look at mythology. Let's look at the real deep roots of fantasy and play around with it. And then, let's base it, instead of basing it on the 100 Years' War or some part of the Middle Ages, let's look at Gilgamesh. Let's look at the Iliad. Let's look at the Indian Vedic myths and play around with these fundamental cores of fantasy. But at the same time, let's tie it to a game system where your characters can do really remarkably heroic things, but they're very fragile at the same time. Your death is always a possibility.
So, like normal hero, you don't know what will happen, right? It's like
exactly. And this was and it's unfortunate. Greg Stafford doesn't, I think, have the or didn't have the reputation in Poland that he had. But for those of your audience, Greg Stafford was up there with Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson as the holy trinity of game designers. And unlike Gary and Dave, Greg stayed very active as the chairman of Chaosium in game design. So RuneQuest, he did another little game called Pendragon, was very involved in setting up Call of Cthulhu, Nephilim, etc. But RuneQuest was, his founding creation, and games like Cthulhu, etc., all come out of it. So if I was interested in the great RPG games, RuneQuest is on that very, very short list.
Yeah, so we can say RuneQuest is father and mother for other RPGs that are on the market. Without it,
absolutely, absolutely.
So it gave a lot of ideas, new ideas. As you mentioned in the beginning, there are no levels within it. It's like when you're starting your career as a hero within the Glorantha, you can do anything, and the way you play.
Everybody's a magic user.
Yeah.
Everybody can be a fighter.
So,
you know, this
right.
It was it still is. At the time it was created, it was revolutionary, but it's still incredibly liberating that your character is whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree about it. And when I looking at the new edition of RuneQuest, the part where you are creating your character, as I see it, you know, it's going through history of the past of your character, and on that basis you are creating completely something new. And that approach that we have with the new edition is really, really interesting one. There aren't much RPGs that work that way, I would say. That it's very, very unique.
A lot of that came out of some. So I've been very lucky when I was working on the new edition of RuneQuest. You know, not only did I have Greg very involved in it, but I also had two really remarkable computer game designers that were that had been a big influence on it. One was Ken Ralston, who did Morrowind, Elder Scrolls, etc. And the other one is,
Wow. Yeah, you know, you are just pointing the things that I love. For me, Morrowind is one of the best games. I'm playing it every year and going completely different way. But sorry, please go on.
So Ken, and then there was another designer. There's another great designer, David Dunham, who did this game called King of Dragon Pass and Six Ages. And David had this thing, and David and I had been gaming together for, 30 years. David always raised one of his complaints in character creation is, I don't know my character for the first 3 or 4 sessions. My character never feels, you know, it takes about 3 or 4 sessions before your character actually is a character.
Right.
And I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you may even have created a backstory for that character, but it doesn't give your character a lived-in direction.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I would say from my experience, it's like when you're creating on the paper your character, you did not play that. You didn't feel it really. And when you're starting playing the game, it's completely different experience. Everything comes to life.
And so another one of the guys over at Chaosium, John Wick, who did 7C, he has what he jokingly calls the Greg Stafford rule, which is anytime you think you've come up with a great idea in game design, Greg already has done it, and he did it 30 years ago. And
hello.
I completed the
Laura. Hello, sweetheart. This is my wonderful daughter, but sweetheart, I'm on an interview. Could you go on?
Should I get you something to drink?
No need to. Thank you, sweetheart.
We should call it listening mission.
It's a listening mission. That is awesome.
Isn't so fun?
Anyways, Greg had already come up with the idea of, well, what you should do is let's go back to your grandparents and figure out what the history of your family is, and also the stuff you've already done as a character, so that you start in game in media res. And the advantage of doing that is that your character you already have something to build your connection within the setting. And I absolutely love the family background part of this, because to me what it means is I can play a character. Yes, it means character creation takes a little bit longer, but it means I can get rid of that first 2 or 3 sessions where we're just trying to fumble around trying to figure out who we are,
right, and
just dive immediately into the action.
That's the approach I really love in this new edition of RuneQuest, as you mentioned, because it's like, you know, creating the first 3 sessions is like just looking how I want it to be, not the way that the character will be in the future. And I must tell you that it's always been like when I lost my character at the second or third session, it was like, okay, I can create a new one. And
Next.
and you know, after a couple of sessions, it's more like that I'm feeling familiar with my character and I want to fight for his life. It's like when there is danger, it's not like, okay, I'm going ahead. Of course, if it's in character, I would probably do that, but in my heart it was like, oh my god, I don't want it to die, really.
Well, and this is one of the things that Ken Rolston strung through. Oh, it looks like we have another visitor here.
Hello. Hi.
Okay, Finn, I'm on an interview, buddy.
Okay, I'm just going to sit down.
Okay, please just go and sit down. Thank you.
You almost sat down.
Oh, that's wonderful. And welcome to life in the coronavirus era.
Exactly.
So this is one of the things that Ken Rolston said is what you want to create is you want to create an emotional connection between the player and their character. You want the player to care about their character, especially when you're using a game system like RuneQuest or Cthulhu or any of the other basic role-playing game systems where your character can die so easily. And the reason being is that then you create tension and anxiety. And tension and anxiety equal fun. Right? When we're playing a role-playing game, we don't care about the easy successes. Those are boring. At the time we feel it's great, but that's not actually the things that generate the emotional gestalt that has us excited about being a gamer. It's the bits where, God, I could die here. Should I do it? Should I run away? Should we push forward? And you only really get that when you have a degree of emotional attachment to your character. When you don't care about your character, it's a red shirt. I'm going to send him into combat. He's going to die. That's fine. It's got a 10% chance of success. Whatever. I can always make a new character. When you care about that character, your response to that situation changes dramatically. And because RuneQuest and like Call of Cthulhu are dangerous systems that aren't balanced. They're not intended to be set up that, the player character should be able to pull this off unless they're stupid.
Right.
They're all ones where you really have to think, hey, my character could die in this situation. And the more attachment you're able to give between the player and their character, the more there is that emotional excitement about your decisions within the game. Yeah,
100% agree. Really, it's very good presentation of it, I would say, and I would say either it's the special and it makes special the RuneQuest and the Call of Cthulhu in that way. So I would like to ask you one more thing in such a case. When if it's one of these parts, is it your favorite part of the RuneQuest, or maybe there are other things that you can tell that are your favorite, and you would say that is that special thing about it?
Well, I grew up on basic role playing games. So for me, I've got multiple favorite parts in RuneQuest. The emotional attachment and the fragility of the characters is a big deal for me, but also the idea that the game system models how your character interacts with the setting, but also how the character interacts with itself. So for those of you who are familiar with Cthulhu, that main measure is sanity points, right? And sanity points is this external measurement of how am I dealing with this setting that is solely driving me insane. With RuneQuest, we have runes and passions. which I also absolutely love. And these are, how does my character, is my character somebody who is more likely to devote themselves to death and separation or to life and fertility? Am I somebody who values harmony, or am I somebody who is an agent of disorder, et cetera, et cetera? And all of that is modeled not to take away your agency as a player, but to give you something that, if you've said, hey, my character is devoted to death and disorder, I now have a mechanical support system to encourage me and to incentivize doing just that. And that also is one of my absolute favorite things in RQ, is that it's a game that mechanically encourages you to play your character as you designed your character.
Yeah. So okay. So when I would play, let's say, someone devoted to death or war, when I would go on a fight, on a war, it would encourage me and help me to build that character in that way. Either
yes, but at the same time, the flip side of that is it means that if you're dedicated to that, your character is going to be at a disadvantage with dealing with things pertaining to life and fertility. You've made a design decision as a player that that's where I want to go. And I like that. I like there being polarities that as a player I choose between, and the more the merrier.
When I hear it, I just, it's the way, just how I feel it, but maybe you will explain it the correct way as creator. Because for me, it's like, like a comic book, when you have characters that are black or white, they are red or green, let's say. They are very unique, they are very specific. And when you create such character within the RuneQuest, you're creating very specific one, which is completely different to other ones within your gameplay team, maybe.
Yes.
Question.
And this is one of the things that we're able, if you get rid of classes and you get rid of levels, you're able to distinguish yourselves in ways where character A is completely different from character B, not because they have some sort of war game rule function. Well, I'm totally different from that character because that character is the tank, whereas I am the ranged fighter. Instead, it's I'm totally different than that character, even though we're both characters that have swords and armor and have magic, but I'm different from your character because my character, I'm devoted to what drives me is change, and I'm very stormy in my spirit, and but I love life. While you're devoted, you're of darkness and of secrets and disorder and death. I mean, we may at a superficial level, we may appear the same in that we have the same sort of skills, but in gameplay, we're totally different.
Yep.
And I love that.
Yeah, that's I think that's the main thing for a really good session at the beginning. When you create such characters, even if their characteristic could be similar in the way how they will behave, it will be completely different, and that's very interesting.
I mean, I could say the third thing that I absolutely love about RuneQuest is it's set in Glorantha, which is by leaps and bounds my favorite fantasy setting. I mean, I'm a big, and I'll blame Greg for this. I love mythology. I love ancient history. I love playing around with the roots of what is fantasy. And I think Glorantha does this in a way that that most other fantasy settings just poke around at the surface. But again, that's my own personal bias.
You know, it will be. I don't know. It's just fair, but being honest, you know, I'm a real huge fan of mythology. So for me, it's, you know, like absolutely going into the water that I love and want to swim in it and play. So,
well, and let's face it. I mean, mythology that's what we're playing around with in gaming at a certain level. Call of Cthulhu is similar. We're playing around with some mythological archetypes. You know, we're confronting the other in Call of Cthulhu, and the other is incredibly dangerous, and it's going to destroy us. So in Cthulhu, you have it's a pretty simple exploration of, but it's a mythological journey.
Right.
In RuneQuest, you're playing with the full palette. You know, from everything from, well, if you ever play the RuneQuest starter, the quick start, there's a great, the quick start has this great scenario, and without giving out too many spoilers, at a certain element, it's like a Cthulhu scenario. You're dealing with strange power. Have you played the quick start?
Not yet, but I will for sure. And yeah, so I'm listening.
Without giving out a lot of spoilers, one of the big differences is in you know, you deal with this strange magical power, and the magical power wants sacrifice. It wants worship. Now in Cthulhu, we know what that means. Oh gosh, we've got to destroy it. In RuneQuest, maybe that's what we do. Maybe we say, how much do you want to be? How much of a sacrifice? Maybe we should offer sacrifice to this destructive force of the earth, because that's how we deal with the chthonic powers. And so, you know, one of the jokes is a lot of RuneQuest scenarios are like Cthulhu scenarios, except you are a cultist. You know, you're not going insane. This is just how the world works. As a result, you can have a lot of different types of genres packed into a single scenario. We had with the Chaosium House campaign last night, we had a game that started as a straightforward dungeon bash. It turned very quickly into a Call of Cthulhu scenario where they ran away from it because they recognized that it's dangerous and there's no shame in. And again, this is one of the things I love about RuneQuest and all the BRP games is in D&D, you have an expectation that you should be able to solve the dungeon, right? The dungeon is balanced. You have characters, the appropriate classes and levels and whatnot. You should be able to solve it. There's no such assumption in RuneQuest. And so our players went in. They decided, oh, you know, as long as this is zombies and skeletons, this is no problem. But there's something creepy going on down below. And the spirits are talking to us about bright death from below. Let's get the heck out of here. And they get the heck out of here, preparing to go in again, and they find themselves actually the scenario switches, and they suddenly find themselves in something that's more of Game of Thrones, where they're trying to deal with rival claimants. And it's one of the things I love about Glorantha is you can switch between genres so quickly.
Wow. So, wow. It sounds really incredible, and I believe that our listeners will be much more interested after what they are hearing. So, if they would like to start playing RuneQuest, would Quick Start will be a good solution, or maybe you can recommend something different, either for completely new players and game masters?
Okay, well, we're coming out with later this year. We're coming out with a RuneQuest starter set, just like the Call of Cthulhu starter set. which is what I would say when that's out. That's what I would start with. But if you want to start now, I actually think the Quick Start is a fantastic place to start with it. It's free as a PDF from Chaosium.com. And in it, you play a set of pre-gens. And you basically learn the ropes of parts of the setting. And you deal with a very weird scenario that Jason Draw wrote. And it's got this wonderful mix of feeling like something set in the Bronze Age, but also you could imagine Michael Moorcock having written part of this, and you know, it's both in the mundane, gritty, dangerous world, and is mythological at the same time. So yes,
it's so, you know, as I mentioned, as you said, I will play it for sure. As Dungeon Master, I will download it, and I hope that, you know, maybe I'll record it to Polish audience, and let's see. Maybe they will be more interested, even though, or maybe they will just start on their own.
I mean,
that's the best solution.
I've been running with Marysienko. Well, I'm getting rid of the English, the anglicized version of her name, but you know, Mary and the Black Monk team. Daria and Mahal and Adam. We've been running a bunch of sessions out of the starter set, and now out of the GM's the GM screen and adventure book, which is out of print. And they're all, I have to say, I've played RuneQuest now with a number of Polish players, and I love the way that they approach it. Absolutely love it. Yes.
Good job, guys. that's
really,
awesome.
Really.
Yeah.
I think part of it is that people are more willing to dive into the setting and the mythology without preconditions. And so I love it. I absolutely love running it. And I ran it last year at PureCon as well. I ran a couple of RuneQuest sessions, and they were amongst the best I've had at conventions.
Wow. As you hear, we are good players. So thank you. That's great, really. So maybe let's play a short game. I have something for you. The last question, but let's make it like a scene. So let's head to Glorantha. Let's head it to Old Woods. It's a gloomy and rainy night when suddenly lightning crossed the sky, and in one moment you saw an old man. He looked into your eyes and asked, "Fine traveler, tell me your most epic story from Glorantha. One from your adventures that you can share with me, or I want you pass from here on." He's looking at you and waiting for a...
Clearly, this is a dangerous situation. Old man asking magical secrets from me. The first question I have to you, Mr. GM, is this a person? Am I sure that I'm talking to a person and not a spirit or a god? Can I cast a spell to figure out who I'm talking to?
When you are concentrating and looking at him, you find out that this old wood that you're in probably is filled with many ghosts, and the old man could be one of it. Probably, if you won't answer these questions,
well,
it could end really, really bad.
Well, then I will have to say to him, I will boast of my great and glorious deeds, because I can't tell if this guy is if this ghost or these ghosts are friendly or opposed to me. So maybe I'm gonna die because of what I say. Maybe I will be rewarded. It doesn't matter. I will tell him that I am that I I need to think for a moment. I usually GM.
He's just looking at you like statue and not moving. That's strange. That's strange. It's starting to rain. The trees are, moving around.
I will say that the greatest things that I have done, I have avenged the murder of my father upon the kin of those who killed him. I have entered the underworld. And been amongst the dead and survived. I have wielded the power of my God, and I have brought good harvest to my village and my community. I tell you, ghost and spirit, have you done anything to rival my deeds? And I glare at him, and I'm not going to be intimidated by this guy. I have done my things.
I believe that when you said these words, he was still looking at you, and in one moment you saw that in his eyes there was something very special. He was happy about it, because now the real hero came to Old Woods and saved his trees. So he disappears, and you start traveling within the Old Woods. Maybe you'll find something interesting in it, or maybe your destiny. We shall see. Anyway, Jeff, thank you very much for the interview.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Let's do it again anytime.
It was really awesome. I'm really, really happy about it. I really appreciate it. For me, it's like, a little bit dream come true, because, as a kid, I was looking on many RPGs. One of them was the RuneQuest, and thank you. And I'm going to play the quick start and give you feedback how it went.
Fantastic. Thank you guys very much, and thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.